Hello citizens, Councillor Gian-Carlo Carra here for Ward 9 TV Lite. This is actually going to be a slightly longer issue because it's a much more complicated issue than I would like it to be. What I want to talk to you about is the issue of rail adjacency. Now, I've been receiving a lot of comments from a lot of landowners and a lot of communities along our rail lines, and that's a lot of Ward 9, and that's a lot of the Green Line, asking, like, what's happening? Is the city saying that we can't develop near our rail lines? And the short answer is no, but we need to do some work. And so about 8-9 months ago, we started to receive signals from the federal government that we would have to start to be more thoughtful about how we developed near our rail lines. And this was, of course, in light of some of the disasters, the disaster that happened out east at Lac-Mégantic. The other thing, of course, from a risk management perspective, our law department was very interested in making sure that in the extremely unlikely event of a rail incident, the city had shown due diligence. And so about 9 months ago, we started to develop this policy, and then we started to realize it was a lot more complex than we wanted it to be. And on March 21st, last week, Council met in a big strategic session, and we addressed a lot of items. And the two most pertinent items to this that we spent a lot of time on was risk management in general, and specifically risk management in rail adjacent properties. So what we decided was that we needed basically a year to get where we wanted to go. And I want you to picture basically two axes of a graph. On the x-axis, you have an old school approach on one side to risk management, and on the other extreme you have a new school approach. The old school approach says, hey, there's something that's risky here, step away, back away, have nothing to do with it. And on the new school approach you say, hey, there's some risk here, but there's also a lot of reward, and if we actually overblow this risk, we might actually expose us to greater risk in other ways. And so there is a commitment from the city to move from an old school approach to risk management, which perhaps has characterized some of our practices in the past, to a new school approach where we're really thoughtful, and that really applies to the rail adjacency question. The chance of a rail disaster, is extremely small. If it happens, it could be bad, but it's extremely small. There's a bigger chance of an airplane falling out of the sky and landing on a neighborhood than of something terrible like Lac-Mégantic happening, especially in a flat environment like the City of Calgary, especially because it's the central main line of everything. So what we have to understand is that we have to balance risk and reward, and there's high impact, low frequency, and then there's high frequency, low impact, and understanding the difference between those two. And if we actually fixate on a very high impact but extremely low frequency event, what we could be doing is dismantling transit-oriented development, dismantling the density of our downtown, and actually forcing people to spread out across the landscape. And we know when we get into our cars, auto accidents happen all the time. And over time, you could get a lot more damage and a lot more impact to people's lives and dollars and pocketbooks and all of those things from just driving around the landscape than you could from one generational or multi-generational incident on the rail. And just as we're sort of committing to building a city of transit-oriented development and higher density, a city that grows up, it would be extremely short-sighted to assess risk solely around a potential rail incident. Now, I'm very pleased that we're taking that new school approach. The other axis of the graph is sort of like old school planning on one side, and then on the other side, a new school urban design approach. And an old school planning approach would say, hey, there's a potential danger here. What we need is a safe zone of 30 meters, 100 feet, either side of the rail where you can't do anything, just in case. And that was sort of the old school approach that we were potentially going to take, and that 200-meter swath through our downtown, through the Green Line, was freaking out a lot of communities and a lot of landowners, and it was freaking me out as well. It was making me quite angry. What we got from administration on March 21st was a commitment to, rather than just say, here's a number, 30 meters, blah, to take a new school urban design approach and say, well, why do we need 30 meters? well, actually, we need to make sure that we've got access into the rails. We need to make sure that if something tips over, we can put it back up. We need room to work, and we need room to stage. That doesn't take 30 meters. It takes specific entry zones. It takes a much smaller room to work, and pockets where we can stage equipment and stuff like that. And if we take a new school planning approach, we can reduce those setbacks. We can thoughtfully approach the risk management. We can say, these are reasonable things to do at this scale of project, and these things are beyond the scope of what a neighborhood or something can possibly hope to do. And it's not really that big an issue compared to the other risks. So that's the approach we're going to take. It's going to take us a year to get there. Landowners, industry, communities are going to be involved. And in the meantime, we've sent the message that doesn't stop development. It doesn't stop our ability to get things done. We just have to start transitioning to that approach. So if you're freaking out, don't freak out. I think we're on the right path. I'm sorry it's taking as long as it is, but this is important work and we have to get it right. So with that, Councillor Carra signing off.